Hello everyone. This video introduces the Megami Tensei series. Megami Tensei is not as well known as Dragon Quest or Final Fantasy, but it is a long-standing and popular RPG series in Japan. This is one of the few RPGs whose first games were released around the same time as Dragon Quest and Final Fantasy and are still around today. However, due to its unique system and storyline, Megami Tensei never became as popular as Dragon Quest or Final Fantasy, but it has been loved by core fans for many years. But it's hard to convey the appeal of Megami Tensei in a single video. This time I will provide a brief introduction to the Megami Tensei series, and I would like to explore its deeper appeal, such as its story, on another occasion. First of all, I hope this video will help you understand the features of the Megami Tensei series. Now enjoy the video. The Megami Tensei series originates from Digital Devil story Megami Tensei and its sequel, which were released for the NES. Although there is no story connection to the subsequent titles, the connections are strong enough that they could be seen as a continuous series. It was from this game that the basic systems of the Megami Tensei series were established, such as 3D dungeons, communication with demons and demons combining. The original Megami Tensei was a game created as part of a media mix based on the novel Digital Devil story Megami Tensei that was published at the time. The story of this game begins as a sequel to the first volume of the novel, but since the story is different from the second volume of the novel onwards, the novel and the game are depicted as parallel worlds. The protagonist of this work is a genius high school programmer who summons a demon using a demon summoning program, but fails to control it. The events that follow this incident involve him resolving the situation with the help of the heroine, who has transferred to the school, and this is the general storyline of the first volume of the novel. Later, the great demon Lord Lucifer appears, plotting to conquer the human world, and the two travel to the Asuka's great demon palace to defeat him and battle Lucifer. The Megami Tensei series is often set in a ruined Tokyo, but this game, like Persona, has a story of the extraordinary within the ordinary. It is with Digital Devil story Megami Tensei 2 that the story of the Megami Tensei series begins to become established. Tokyo in 2036, 34 years after the nuclear war. While the city is overrun by demons, the protagonist and his best friend are living in a safe shelter when a demon claiming to be a messenger of God appears before them and tells them that they are the saviors. The two leave the shelter and travel to a desolate Tokyo. This work established the foundations of the series, with a story set in a devastated Tokyo and cities based on real place names such as Ikebukuro and Shinjuku. In October 1992, the hardware was switched to SNES and the first game in the new series, Shin Megami Tensei, was released. The story is unrelated to the previous game, and is set in Kichijoji, Tokyo in the year 19XX. A mysterious incident gradually erodes everyday life, and the story eventually leads to a devastated Tokyo. The story is a mix of parts 1 and 2 of the NES game Megami Tensei. After a murder occurs in Inokashira Park, a series of mysterious events begin to occur around the protagonist, an ordinary high school student. The protagonist meets Steven on an arcade shopping street, transforming into a demon and disappearing somewhere. He then sends a demon summoning program to his computer. A warning that demons will appear in the world. He meets strange boys and girls in his dreams. Demons begin to appear in cities in the real world. The protagonist is taken into custody by the police as a suspect in a murder case. After his arrest, he is somehow taken to the hospital, where he meets one of the boys he met in his dream and Steven, who sent him the email. Steven was the developer of a mechanical terminal that could transport matter, but it seems that it was connected to the demon world, causing demons to become rampant in the human world. Steven, who says he himself was attacked by a demon and left in a wheelchair, says that he created the demon summoning program as a result of his experience. The two manage to defeat the demons and escape the hospital. When they return to Kichijoji, they rescue a boy in camouflage uniform who is being attacked by thugs, but he is also someone they met in their dream. A unique feature of this game's story is that dreams and reality are linked. These three will be the main players in fighting against the demons that have overflowed the city. But, the situation takes a turn for the worse. In Tokyo, the self-defense forces stage a coup, and the mastermind, Lieutenant Colonel Goto, who has taken control of the city, declares that in order to resolve the crisis, he will revive ancient gods known as demons and build a utopia for humans and demons. Meanwhile, US Ambassador Thorman intends to mobilize the US military to fight against Goto and the self-defense forces. During this, the protagonist and company encounter a female leader of the resistance who is trying to stop Goto and Thorman. She is the last heroine they met in their dream. The protagonist is then forced to make a decision. Will he cooperate with Goto, who is trying to create a chaotic world, and defeat Thorman? Will he pledge his loyalty to Thorman, who is aiming to create a world of order where only the chosen few can live, and defeat Goto? Or will you deny them both and defeat them both? A unique feature of this game is that the story changes depending on the player's choices. But, no matter what option you choose at this point, the story will proceed in such a way that Tokyo is destroyed by an ICBM launched by the US military. The protagonists barely manage to escape the threat of the ICBM by being transported to another world. But, because they had spent time in a world where time flowed differently, 30 years had passed in Tokyo upon their return, and a unique system of order had been established. This is how Tokyo collapses, creating the game's desolate, near-future worldview. The destruction of Tokyo by this ICBM is an event that will become a turning point in history in subsequent games and spin-offs. So far, I've briefly talked about these three titles, but I'd like to talk a little about the system as well. As I mentioned at the beginning, the core of the system is the 3D dungeon, conversations with demons, and demon fusion. As you can see, 3D dungeons are three-dimensional dungeons viewed from a first-person perspective. Compared to the top-down dungeons in regular 2D RPGs, it's harder to grasp the structure, making them more difficult. You can negotiate with demons, who appear as regular enemies, to make them your allies. The maximum number of battle members is 6, but more than half of the members will usually be demons. Incidentally, Dragon Quest V, released in 1992, was the first Dragon Quest game in the series that allowed players to turn enemy characters into allies. The first Pokemon game was released in 1996. This shows how ahead of its time Megami Tensei was. There are 4 main characters in Shin Megami Tensei, but they never all fight at the same time, so most of the time the battle members are demons. But, unlike humans, the demons you befriend will not level up, no matter how much experience you give them. This is where the demon fusion system comes in, which can be done in a place called Jakyo Manor. You can choose 2 to 3 allies and fuse them together to create a single, stronger demon. Demon fusion follows set rules, just like Persona Fusion in the Persona series. There are multiple types of demons, and the demon that is born will vary greatly depending on which types of demons are fused. It is also possible to combine demons with swords, making it possible to create a special sword. You can also learn about each demon's personality from the conversations you have when recruiting them. One of the fun things about this game is finding out what personality each demon of each race has. By the way, in the Japanese version, the demon that is born from the fusion has a standard line of Kongo Tomoyoroshiku, and it is a famous line among fans. Next I'll talk about alignment, which is the most important aspect of the Megami Tensei series. This relates to the choice I mentioned earlier of whether to defeat Goto, Thorman, or both. In Megami Tensei, there are 3 alignments: low, which emphasizes order according to God, chaos, which emphasizes freedom according to demons, and neutral, which does not belong to either. Low and chaos are separate factions, fighting for supremacy. Goto, who tried to create a chaotic world overrun by demons, is chaos. Thorman, who aims for divine order, is low, and neutral rejects both. Taking actions related to each elemental faction will change your element, which will affect the progress and ending of the story. Note that low is not justice and chaos is not evil. Low believes that order is absolute, and its ideal is absolute rule by one god and angels. They immediately purge anyone who opposes them and will do whatever it takes to achieve their goals. Those who obey are guaranteed their lives and safety for the time being, but because they are insignificant in the eyes of God and the angels, the majority of humans will end up in a totally controlled dystopia. Chaos is made up of demons belonging to polytheism, demon kings and fallen angels who have been degraded by the one and only God. Chaos aims for freedom, but it is a dangerous world without law or order. Chaos aims for a world of survival of the fittest. The polar opposite of low, which aims for a world of total control, chaos aims to create a free nation where might is right. Both low and chaos are extreme ideologies, but the remaining neutral may be the most hopeful for humanity. That's because it's a story about humans choosing their own path and gaining true freedom. But, unlike Low and Chaos, where you can reach the ending by destroying one faction, the neutral story requires you to destroy both factions. The neutral story has the longest and most difficult journey to the ending. The two boys, who meet in a dream and become companions at first, each become heroes embodying Low and Chaos, and their fates will change dramatically depending on the choices the protagonist makes. Although not related to the branching of the story, in addition to Low and Chaos there are two other attributes, Light and Dark, which are interrelated on the vertical and horizontal axes. Light and Dark are used to classify characters, enemy characters, boss characters, etc. Beings such as goddesses, divine beasts, and angels are classified as light, evil spirits, demon kings, evil gods, etc. as dark, and beings that do not belong to either category as neutral. For example, goddesses and angels who belong to light and low seek orderly progress. Demons and dragon gods who belong to light and chaos are good, but they dislike a world of order and prefer chaos. Dark and low, evil gods seek to control the world through evil order. Dark and chaos, demon kings desire chaos where destruction and slaughter run rampant. Low and chaos, and light and dark, determine the stances of each boss and enemy character. This division of attributes is an element that has become less prominent in the Persona series, but in Megami Tensei it shapes the world throughout the series. Now that we've covered the basics of the series, let's move on to the next step. In March 1990, Shin Megami Tensei 2 was released. The story takes place in the year 20XX, several decades after the previous work, probably around the late 21st century. The previous film began in the 1990s, with the protagonist evacuating to another world to escape an ICBM, then returning to Tokyo 30 years later. As a result, the second half of the story in the previous film was set in the 2020s, and this film begins 50 years later. In the previous game, a massive flood occurred after the ICBM, leaving Tokyo submerged. The Order of Messiah then built a cathedral, which later became known as Tokyo Millennium, and this is the setting for this game. The Order of Messiah is a religion that embodies law, which upholds law and order. The cult is backed by Christian and Jewish angels. In contrast, the cult of Gaia embodies chaos, and seeks to reinstate the polytheistic gods that were degraded as demons by the one and only God. They are characterized by an excessive emphasis on harmony with nature and chaos, and many of their followers engage in destructive behavior. In the year 20XX, Tokyo Millennium is under the control of the Order of Messiah, with the weakened cult of Gaia going underground and engaging in sporadic terrorist activities. In Shin Megami Tensei 2, law reigns supreme, but it doesn't seem to be a continuation of the previous law ending. This is also denied in an interview with the developer. There is a theory that no matter what ending you got in the previous game, law will have risen to power over the course of several decades and this game will begin with. This theory is probably the most likely. This work is set in a futuristic cyberpunk worldview. While retaining the image of a decadent Tokyo after great destruction, there are many elements that evoke the near future, such as a virtual space system that makes full use of virtual reality, virtual battles, and countless skyscrapers inside megastructures. This work depicts the negative aspects of law as an organization. There is a superordinate organization of the Order of Messiah called the Center, and it is a completely hierarchical society. The society is divided into classes: the Holy Knights, an elite group that reports directly to the center; first-class citizens, who can enter and leave the center; second-class citizens, who are permitted to possess the armed terminal comp; and ordinary citizens, who are allowed to live in Tokyo Millennium but lead harsh lives. The game's protagonist Hawk loses his memory and wanders around until he is rescued by a gym trainer and trained to be a Colosseum player. While training with the virtual battler before the finals, Hawk encounters Steven in the virtual world. Steven also appeared in the previous film, and is the person who gave the protagonist the demon summoning program. Steven's appearance hasn't changed at all since the previous film, even though decades have passed, so it's more appropriate to interpret him as a non-human being. Steven says that Tokyo Millennium has already reached its limit due to terrorism and social inequality, and that demons will soon be overrun, but he hopes that Hawk will use the demon summoning program to create a way for humans to survive. With the ability to summon demons now available, Hawk wins the finals and becomes the Colosseum champion. This leads Hawk to meet Hiroko, the heroine of the Holy Knights from Center. Hiroko is searching for a little boy who went missing in a terrorist bombing, and asks Hawk, the Colosseum champion, for help. Hawk and Hiroko begin working together, and this is where the story really begins. Just as Steven predicted, Hawk's journey will change the fate of Tokyo Millennium. An epic story just as epic as the previous installment unfolds. As with the previous game, the second half of the story will branch out depending on your actions and choices. Will you further strengthen the world that is biased towards law at the start of the game and create a utopia where only the chosen few can live happily? Will you reject the hierarchical society controlled by law and create a free society where only might is justice? Will you reject both and aim for a world where all people can forge their own path by making their own choices? In the Shin Megami Tensei series, some titles have attributes that are different from law and chaos, but in all titles the story branches depending on the main character's attributes. However, there haven't been any major changes to the game system. For example, if you compare Shin Megami Tensei 1 and 2, 2 has improved upon some of the complaints about the previous game and is easier to play, but the system is pretty much the same. One of the most important changes from the previous game is the change to extra skills. Extra skills are separate from magic and are equivalent to special skills, but instead of consuming MP when used like magic, the skill that is used is random. But, demons in the previous game could only use 3 extra skills and magic combined. For example, if you can use 2 magic, you can only use 1 extra skill, so you can only activate certain extra skills. In the previous game, there were many enemies that were weak to abnormal status attacks, so if you recruited a demon that could use extra skills that immobilize all enemies, the game itself became much easier. In Shin Megami Tensei 2, the number of magic and extra skills that allies can use has increased significantly, so the specifications have been significantly adjusted. Players can now choose which extra skills they use, and attacks that inflict status abnormalities now consume MP, while physical attacks now consume HP instead of MP. Extra skills that consume HP also appear in the Persona series, but are derived from this game. Another unique feature of Shin Megami Tensei 2 is the introduction of a system called magical inheritance when performing demon fusion. However, unlike Shin Persona's skill inheritance, which allows players to freely set a large number of skills, Shin Megami Tensei 2's magical inheritance only allows a small number of magic spells to be automatically inherited. There's a famous story about demon fusion in Shin Megami Tensei 2 among fans. When you use a human character, such as the enemy Meshin, as your ally to fuse, the demon that's born will be highly random. Check the predicted fusion result, and if you don't like it, cancel and retry repeatedly, which will allow you to create a high-level demon that's out of proportion to the main character's level, and you can freely adjust magic inheritance. Fans also saw the rough finish of this system as being charming. Next up is Shin Megami Tensei 3 Nocturne, which was released for the PlayStation 2 in February 2003. The story is set in Tokyo in the year 200X. However, this title is no longer connected to the previous 2 games, and instead is a new story. The protagonist is an ordinary boy who attends a high school in Tokyo. The story begins one day when he and his classmates Isamu Nitta and Chiaki Tachibana head to Shinjuku Hygienic Hospital to visit their hospitalized homeroom teacher, Yuko Takao. But, strangely enough, there was no one there, not even Yuko, who was supposed to be hospitalized, nor any hospital staff or patients. While the protagonist and Isamu each search for Yuko, the protagonist visits the basement and encounters a man named Hikawa who is operating a suspicious device. As of today, the old world perishes and a new one is born, Hikawa said, summoning a demon to kill the protagonist as a troublesome intruder. However, at that moment Yuko appeared and stopped Hikawa, saying, "If you kill him, I won't cooperate with you." At this point, we see that Yuko and Hikawa work together. Hikawa tells Yuko, the teachers should take care of the students, and urges them to leave the room. The protagonist ends up talking with Yuko on the rooftop, where Yuko tells him that what Hikawa said is true. This means that conception will soon begin, the world will sink into chaos and a new world will be born, and all humans not currently in this hospital will die. With only the protagonist, Yuko, Hikawa, Isamu, Chiaki, and one other man left in the hospital, humanity is almost completely wiped out. Yuko entrusts the protagonist with her feelings, asking him to find her in the new world. Yuko thought that as the priestess of creation in the new world, she could be of some help to the protagonist. At this point, the protagonist and the player do not understand what Yuko and Hikawa are saying, but before they can think about it, conception begins. The ground in Tokyo begins to curl up, and the city is transformed into a vortex world, shaped like a ball with the inside of it swallowed up. When conception occurs, everyone except those in the hospital dies, demons run rampant in Tokyo, and a wide area turns into a desert. In the midst of the chaos caused by conception, the protagonist encounters a mysterious old woman and a blonde child, and is implanted with a mysterious creature called Magatama, turning him into a half-demon. When he wakes up, Yuko and the others who would have survived are no longer in the hospital. The protagonist sets out on a journey to Tokyo, which has turned into a vortex world, in search of clues to break out of this world. This change in the world is only a preliminary step in creating the world that Hikawa and Yuko envision. At the center of Vortex World is a luminous object called Kagutsuchi, which is both the world's moon and its caretaker. If someone with a concept that represents the way the world is called reason reaches Kagutsuchi, a new world based on that concept will be born. But, the utopia desired by an individual is not necessarily the ideal for everyone. The law and chaos conflict from previous games is a good example. The Shin Megami Tensei series is characterized by factional conflicts based on attributes such as law and chaos. In other words, reason corresponds to law and chaos in this game. The previous game's law, chaos, neutral have been replaced with Shirjima, Yasuga, Musubi reasons, which form the basis of the game's story. In this work, law has been replaced by Shirjima. The proponent of Shirjima is Hikawa. Shirjima is reason, which idealizes a world of silence by eliminating all emotions from humans and turning them efficiently like a waste-free cog. In this work, chaos is replaced by Yasuga. The proponent of Yasuga is Chiaki Tachibana, a classmate of the protagonist. Even before Vortex World, she had a strong tendency to believe that there should be differences in abilities among humans. Perhaps because of this, Yasuga is a very violent ideology that believes that only the superior, the strong, and the beautiful should exist, and that the weak, the incompetent, and the ugly should be immediately eliminated by force. In this work, neutral is replaced by Musubi. The proponent of Musubi is Isamu Nita, a classmate of the protagonist. Easily influenced by those around him, Isamu wanders alone through the chaotic vortex world and encounters terrible experiences. In the process, he comes to the conclusion that, in the end, no one will help me, humans are always alone. This is how he comes to have a reason called Musubi, and aims to create a completely isolated world where he does everything alone. That's a rough explanation of reason. Unlike the previous game, choosing neutral is not necessarily the correct answer in this game. However, just like the previous games, it is possible to choose any reason to progress through the story, and it is also possible to choose a story where you reject all reason and choose your own path. In other words, Hikawa, Chiaki and Isamu are like the law hero and chaos hero of Shin Megami Tensei 1. But, the story of this game has not been well received in Japan. Shin Megami Tensei 1 and 2, which were games for the SNES, had a small amount of text but captivated fans with a dynamic storyline that included changing the world. But, the story in this game has a minimum of events and progresses with a lackluster development. This is partly because there are extremely few characters, as almost all humans in Tokyo have been wiped out at the beginning of the story, but it feels like not much effort was put into the scenario in this game. However, Shin Megami Tensei 3 is widely regarded as the best in the series. Its strengths lie in its system. The most distinctive feature is the press-turn battle. Press-turn is a system that is like the origin of the One More battle from the Persona series. Currently, many titles in the Shin Megami Tensei and Persona series use a system in which the number of turns for allies increases when you exploit an enemy's weak spot or land a critical hit. The pioneer of this system was Shin Megami Tensei 3's press-turn battle. In Persona 5, hitting a weak point or hitting a critical hit will put the enemy in a downed state, and the attacking character will be able to act again. If all enemies can be downed during that turn, a powerful all-out attack will be unleashed. This type of battle system is a derivative of Shin Megami Tensei 3's press-turn battle. Shin Megami Tensei 3 was a turning point for the series. So let me explain what press-turn was like in this game. First of all, the enemy and ally attack turns and defense turns are clearly separated. During an attack turn, an icon is displayed in the top right corner of the screen equal to the number of members, and when one character acts, one icon is reduced and the next character acts. When the number of icons reaches 0, the attack turn ends and the roles of attack and defense with the enemy switch. However, if you attack using the enemy's weak attribute or land a critical hit, the icon consumption will be 0.5. This means that one icon can be used to perform 2 actions. Theoretically, you can have a maximum of twice the number of actions as the number of members. Since there can be a maximum of 4 members, you can act a maximum of 8 times per turn. But, if the enemy avoids your attack or you attack using an attribute that they are good at, 2 icons will be consumed at once. If the attack is absorbed or reflected, all remaining icons are consumed and the attack turn is transferred to the enemy. If you attack carelessly when you don't know the enemy's attributes, you will suffer. Also, if an enemy attacks an attribute that is weak to you, the enemy's number of actions will increase. For example, if the enemy uses an electric magic attack on all allies, and there is even one ally who is weak to electric, the enemy's actions will increase. They will often be attacked again with an all-out electric magic spell, and the whole party will be wiped out. If the battle proceeds according to the player's strategy, they can win a crushing victory, but even the slightest mistake can result in an easy game over. There's also the element of luck involved, such as the enemy's preemptive attack, making for a deep battle system. One-sided losses are common in Mega 10, but defeating bosses through repeated rematches and trial and error is also part of the game's appeal. Incidentally, players will see the game over scene many times, which is reminiscent of the final scene of A Dog of Flanders, so fans have dubbed it Patoru. In A Dog of Flanders, a boy named Nello and his dog Patrash are taken to heaven with an angel. This game ends so often that you'll soon find yourself laughing and saying, Patoru again. There is another major feature of the system. The main character is a half-demon called a demi-fiend, which gives the system some unique specifications. The protagonist has a magatama planted in his body, turning him into a half-demon, and that magatama is the only equipment the protagonist has. Originally in the Mega 10 series, only humans could equip weapons and armor, and their demon companions could not equip anything, so this game retains that specification. There are different types of magatama, and the equipped magatama will change parameters and elemental resistances. Furthermore, by leveling up, you can learn skills such as magic and special abilities that are suited to the magatama you equip. In previous games, the protagonist mostly attacked with a sword or a gun, but this time the specifications have changed significantly. The party consisted of 6 in the previous game, but in this one it has been reduced to 4, and the heroine-like character has been changed to a slightly different character. Additionally, it has been changed so that companion demons will level up to a certain extent by gaining experience points. There are also changes such as the abolition of 3D dungeons and the replacement with general 3D dungeons in a third-person perspective. Next up is Shin Megami Tensei 4, released in May 2013. It was released as a Nintendo 3DS game. The story begins in the Eastern Kingdom of Mikado, a kingdom reminiscent of medieval Europe. In this country, there is a group called samurai who are responsible for maintaining law and order, and all young people who turn 18 are required to take a gauntlet ceremony to confirm their qualifications to become a samurai. The protagonist, Flynn, travels with his friend from his hometown to the royal capital to undergo this ritual, but on the way there he has a strange dream. In the dream, Flynn hears a mysterious voice telling him that he is the creator of the world. 2 boys appear who say they have been waiting for him, and he meets a girl who asks him to revive her. Flynn wakes up from this suggestive dream and arrives at the royal capital, where he faces the ceremony. While his friend aspires to become a samurai but fails the ritual, Flynn successfully activates the gauntlet and becomes a member of the elite group, the samurai. The next day, Flynn goes to training, but among the new samurai he sees the 2 boys he met in his dream, Walter and Jonathan. With the addition of another rookie, Esabo, the 4 of them deepen their friendship through training and gradually grow into full-fledged samurai. But, an incident that occurs in Flynn's hometown, Kixigeorgi, begins to dramatically change the fates of the 4. Kixigeorgi is derived from Kichijoji in Tokyo. There is also a strong sense of Shin Meg 10-1 in the plot, such as the boys who meet through dreams coming together in reality to fight together. Unlike Shin Mega 10-3, which was considered an outlier for the series, this game once again feels like a nostalgic throwback to the Mega 10 series. Additionally, it incorporates character settings that are easy to empathize with, developed through the Persona and Devil Summoner series. Walter and Jonathan are like the Chaos Heroes and Law Heroes from Shin Mega 10-1. The alignments have also been reverted to Law, Chaos, and Neutral from Shin Mega 10-1 and 2, rather than Shurjima, Yasuga, and Musubi from Shin Mega 10-3. The story branches depending on Flynn's attributes, which also changes the fates of Walter and Jonathan. Walter, who comes from a lower-class background and has a hungry spirit and a free-spirited personality, becomes a warrior who embodies chaos in his search for power and freedom. Coming from an upper-class background, Jonathan has a sense of patriotism and noblesse oblige, and seeks order and the peace of the status quo, becoming someone who embodies the law. Additionally, Stephen appears in a dungeon early in the story to provide advice and support. Stephen did not appear in Shin Megami Tensei 3, but this will be his first appearance since 1 and 2. Although it is a fantasy, the name Kichijoji makes one wonder about the connection between the worldview of this work and the previous works, but this is not clearly explained. However, it is stated in the work that although Shin Megami Tensei 4 seems similar to 1 and 2, it is set in a different history. The Eastern Kingdom of Mikado that appears in this game is related to the real-life Tokyo. Following the Kichijoji incident, Flynn and others are ordered to capture the mastermind behind it all, Black Samurai. Flynn and others arrive at Tokyo, a city mentioned in legend as the Black Samurai's stronghold. From then on, the four of them would operate in Tokyo, receiving orders from the higher-ups of the Eastern Kingdom of Mikado via communication. The Tokyo depicted in this game is isolated by a huge dome-like rock formation surrounding it, and many demons live inside, threatening human life. 25 years ago, an attack to wipe out the world took place, known as the War of Gods work. Masakado, the guardian deity of Tokyo, managed to avoid the attack by turning his body into a rock dome and covering Tokyo, but other cities on Earth were wiped out. The people of Tokyo were saved, but the flow of time became distorted, demons appeared in the city, and it became a dangerous area where people's lives could be easily taken. Later, humans chosen by angels founded the Eastern Kingdom of Mikado on top of the rock dome, where they lived an uncivilized life. This is the history of this world. This is just my personal opinion, but the story of Shin Megami Tensei 4 feels like a cross between Shin Megami Tensei 1 and the Japanese anime comic Attack on Titan. That's enough about the story, let's move on to explaining the system. Battles are fought between a four-person party consisting of the main character and 3 demons, and continue from the previous game with the press-turn battle system. If Walter, Jonathan, and Esabo are present, one of them will be chosen at random each time a battle occurs and will automatically perform an attack at the end of each ally's turn. There are no status screens for these 3 characters, and they can't be equipped or changed. A special feature of the press turn feature in this game is that when you attack an opponent's weak point or land a critical hit, there is a certain chance that the character's image will grin. When this state occurs, attack power, evasion rate, critical hit rate, etc. are greatly increased for one turn. But, your enemies may be in this state as well, which can be quite troublesome. Regarding Flynn's growth, there is a whisper event, which occurs when a companion learns all skills that can be learned by leveling up. When this occurs, Flynn can choose to learn the companion's skills by copying them. In Shin Megami Tensei 3, you could learn skills using the equipped Magatama. But, if you discarded a skill or decided not to learn it, you would not be able to learn it again. However, in Shin Megami Tensei 4, you can relearn the same skill from a different demon, so it is no longer possible to become unable to learn a skill. Furthermore, by learning the same skill from multiple allies, its performance can be enhanced up to a maximum of 8 times. Another unique feature of this game is that systems such as the mapping and Cathedral of Shadows are apps installed on the Gauntlet. Unlike previous titles, this system allows players to perform demon fusion anywhere they like. You can install new apps using the app points that Flynn earns when leveling up. This allows you to increase the number of skills Flynn or your allies can learn, give you an advantage in negotiations with demons, or lower the level requirements for demon fusion. Shin Megami Tensei 4 also has several challenge quests that are unrelated to the story, such as defeating specific enemies or delivering special items. Shin Megami Tensei 4 also has a sequel called Final. The protagonist of this game is a 15-year-old boy named Nanashir, who later becomes embroiled in a battle to save Tokyo alongside Flynn. Shin Megami Tensei 4 and Final is 2 parts that can be said to be one story, and it is quite well made. The Shin Megami Tensei series has amazing stories for 1 and 2, and has a different appeal from Dragon Quest and Final Fantasy. The Shin Megami Tensei 4 is based on the story of the first and second games, but adds original elements, and has improved graphics, operability, and battle system, greatly improving the poor game balance that was a drawback of the first and second games. To convey the appeal of the Shin Megami Tensei series, it is necessary to dig deeper into 1 and 2. However, I don't think a short time is enough to convey the appeal of Shin Megami Tensei 1 and 2 to people who haven't played them yet. I'll talk about the appeal of Shin Megami Tensei 1 and 2 on another occasion. This has been a rough overview of the Megami Tensei series, but that's all for today's video. Shin Mega 10 may not be a traditional RPG like Dragon Quest or Final Fantasy, but I hope you understand that it is a series with a highly flexible system that allows you to enjoy every detail, and a story with a unique appeal. In addition to Dragon Quest, Final Fantasy, and Zelda, Japan has many lesser-known and fascinating RPGs. On this channel, we would like to share the appeal of such games, so please subscribe if you are interested. That's it for this video. See you next time.